The story begins on the sprawling campus of Ravenswood University, an isolated institution perched on the edge of a dense, foggy forest. Legend had it that the campus library's restricted section, sealed off decades ago, held more than just old books. It was a doorway to something far more sinister. Few believed the rumors, but no one dared enter after dark. Emma, a diligent literature major, was desperate to finish her thesis on the occult origins of local myths. Her professor, Dr. Calloway, had hinted that the most critical resources lay in the restricted section. When Emma asked how she could access it, his cryptic response was, "Sometimes, knowledge demands a sacrifice." Undeterred, Emma stole a key to the library after overhearing the janitor mention its hiding place. That night, she crept into the massive, silent building. The towering shelves loomed over her like silent witnesses. When she unlocked the door to the restricted section, a wave of icy air rushed out. The room was unnaturally cold, and the lights flickered before plunging her into darkness. Emma switched on her flashlight and began scanning the rows of decaying tomes. Midway through her search, she noticed a faint scratching sound coming from deeper within the room. She froze, her breath visible in the freezing air. "Hello?" she called, her voice shaky. No response. As she moved further in, she saw a book lying open on a desk, though she was certain she hadn't touched it. The pages seemed to turn on their own, as if invisible hands were flipping through them. Her flashlight began to flicker. Then she heard it, a whisper, low and guttural. The words were unintelligible, but they sent shivers down her spine. The whisper grew louder, echoing in the confined space. Emma panicked, backing away toward the door, but it slammed shut with a deafening thud. She turned to flee, but the shelves seemed closer than before, as if they had shifted to trap her. The air grew heavier, and she felt something brush against her arm, something cold and wet. Turning her flashlight to her side, she saw nothing but empty air. Then she saw the shadow. It was not hers. The shadow stretched unnaturally across the floor and up the walls, moving even when she stood still. It twisted and expanded, forming the outline of a figure with impossibly long limbs and hollow, glowing eyes. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar as the figure stepped closer. Emma screamed and stumbled backward, hitting a shelf. Dozens of books fell, revealing a gaping hole in the wall. From it, she could hear the sound of dripping water and faint sobbing. A force seemed to pull her toward the hole, her feet sliding against the polished floor as if gravity itself had turned against her. Desperately, she clung to the edge of a shelf and screamed for help. Just as the force seemed about to drag her in, the door to the restricted section burst open, and Dr. Calloway stood there, holding a lantern that cast a strange, pulsating light. The shadow recoiled, and the whispers silenced. "You should never have come here," he said, his voice grave. He led her out, refusing to answer her frantic questions. Before she could process what had happened, he locked the door and burned the key in front of her. The next day, Dr. Calloway vanished, and the restricted section was sealed off with heavy chains. Emma dropped her thesis, but she never stopped having nightmares of the shadow and the whispers. Years later, she learned that every decade, a student who entered the restricted section disappeared without a trace. She realized with a chilling certainty that she had been chosen, but for some reason spared. Now, whenever she passes by the library, she hears it again, the faint sound of whispers and scratching, beckoning her back. At Blackwood University, a centuries-old school known for its eerie architecture, one dormitory was unlike the rest. Hawthorne Hall was avoided by most students, especially room 306. The room had been unoccupied for years, rumored to be cursed after a student mysteriously vanished decades ago. When Lisa, a transfer student, arrived late in the semester, she had no choice but to take room 306, despite the murmurs of other students. "It's just a room," she told herself as she unpacked. The first few nights were uneventful, though the room had a peculiar coldness no heater could chase away. The closet door refused to stay shut, swinging open despite her repeated attempts to close it. Lisa shrugged it off as faulty hinges. On the fifth night, she woke up to the sound of soft tapping. Groggy, she looked at her phone. 3:06 a.m. The tapping grew louder, coming from the closet door. "Hello," Lisa called out, her voice trembling. No answer. She got up, hesitating, and opened the closet. It was empty. She closed it firmly, using a chair to wedge it shut. The next night, the tapping returned, louder this time. Again, she woke up at exactly 3:06 a.m. The chair she had wedged against the door was pushed aside, and the closet was slightly ajar. Lisa's heart raced, but she convinced herself it was her imagination. She decided to sleep with the lights on. The following day, she confided in her roommate, Chloe, who lived down the hall. "Room 306? You need to get out of there," Chloe said, her face pale. "Why? What's the big deal?" Lisa asked. Chloe hesitated. "They say the girl who lived there before vanished into the closet. The police searched everywhere, but there was no trace of her." Lisa laughed nervously. "It's just a story." Chloe didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. That night, Lisa kept her phone close. She stayed up, determined to catch whatever or whoever was behind the tapping. As the clock struck 3:06 a.m., the sound began again, rhythmic and deliberate. Lisa's flashlight trembled as she aimed it at the closet. The door creaked open by itself. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice cracking. The tapping stopped. The room was silent, but then she noticed something. Faint scratch marks on the inside of the closet door. She hadn't seen them before. Suddenly, the closet door swung open fully, slamming against the wall. A freezing gust of air filled the room, and Lisa saw a figure standing inside. It was a girl, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her eyes wide and lifeless. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Paralyzed with fear, Lisa couldn't look away. The girl pointed at Lisa, then slowly pointed down, toward the floor. The tapping resumed, louder and faster, now coming from beneath the bed. Lisa screamed and bolted out of the room, running to Chloe's door. She banged on it frantically until Chloe opened. "You saw her, didn't you?" Chloe whispered. Lisa nodded, trembling. The two decided to report it to campus security, but when they returned with an officer, room 306 looked normal, except for the closet, which was now sealed shut with thick nails. "What happened here?" Lisa demanded. The officer exchanged a grim look with Chloe. "That closet has been sealed for years. You shouldn't have been able to open it." Lisa moved out the next day, but she couldn't forget the girl's face, or the way she pointed at the floor. Years later, construction crews renovating Hawthorne Hall discovered a hidden compartment beneath room 306. Inside were the skeletal remains of the missing student, and carved into the floorboards were scratch marks, along with one word, "Help." At Sterling University, there was an old bell tower at the center of campus. Though unused for decades, students claimed to hear the bell toll at midnight, despite the mechanism being broken. The university dismissed the stories as rumors, but those who heard the bell often disappeared, never to be seen again. Jenna, a curious journalism major, was determined to uncover the truth. For her final project, she decided to investigate the bell tower. Her friends warned her against it. "People say it's cursed," her best friend Mark said. "Just let it go." But Jenna didn't believe in curses. Armed with a flashlight, a recorder, and her camera, she snuck into the bell tower one foggy night. The inside was a maze of cobwebs, creaking wooden stairs, and an overpowering smell of decay. She climbed higher, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. At the top, she found the massive, rusted bell, its edges jagged and sharp. Carved into the metal were strange symbols she couldn't decipher. Her flashlight flickered, and she felt a chill run down her spine. Suddenly, the bell tolled. The deafening sound echoed through the tower, shaking the walls. Jenna checked her watch. Midnight. Her stomach tightened as she realized the stories were true. "Just the wind," she whispered to herself, trying to stay calm. But then she heard it, footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, coming up the stairs. Jenna called out, "Who's there?" No response. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Gripping her flashlight, she shone it toward the staircase, but no one was there. Yet the steps continued. Her recorder picked up faint whispers, words she couldn't understand. Panicking, she backed away, but her foot slipped. She grabbed the railing, her heart pounding, and accidentally dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, stopping at the base of the bell. Jenna scrambled to retrieve it, but froze when she saw a figure reflected in the polished surface of the bell. It was a man, dressed in tattered clothes, his eyes hollow and empty. He raised his hand, pointing directly at her. When she turned around, no one was there. The bell tolled again, and this time, Jenna felt a pull, a force dragging her closer to the edge of the tower. She gripped the bell for balance, but the symbols carved into it glowed faintly, burning her hands. A voice echoed in her mind. "You should not have come." Desperate, Jenna grabbed her camera and took a photo, hoping to capture evidence. The flash illuminated the room for a split second, revealing dozens of shadowy figures surrounding her. She screamed and bolted down the stairs, tripping and falling the last few steps. When she reached the bottom, the whispers and footsteps stopped. Jenna never returned to the tower, but she couldn't stop thinking about what she'd seen. When she developed her photos, one image stood out. A clear picture of the bell, with a shadowy figure standing beside it, staring directly at the camera. The next day, her professor called to check on her. "You said you were investigating the bell tower?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Yes," Jenna replied, her voice shaky. "The bell tower burned down 10 years ago," he said. "There's nothing there." Jenna dropped the phone, her heart racing. That night, she heard the bell toll again. This time, from right outside her dorm window.